Moving on to the core of our legal analysis, Group 7 has identified three primary legal issues that arise directly from the transaction between Mooney and Daniels. First, we look at the issues of undue influence Section 16 of a Contract Act 1950. As Mooney's financial advisor, Daniel stood in a fiduciary capacity and a position of active confidence. Because Mooney was an elderly retiree with absolutely no experience in financial matters, Daniel held a position of dominance over her will. He carefully cultivated a close personal relationship over several months and ultimately used this trust to obtain an unfair advantages by pressuring her into signing a highly hazardous contract. Second is the issue of misrepresentations under Section 18. Daniel explicitly represented this highly complex and volatile investment proposal as a low-risk opportunity with guaranteed returns. This was an objectively false representation of fact. Because Mooney trusted his professional expertise implicitly, this false statement directly induced her to sign an agreement she would have otherwise rejected. Finally, this leads us to the third issue, the total absence of free consent under Section 14. Consent is only valid when it is free from coercion, undue influence, or misrepresentation. Here, Daniel aggressively compromised Mooney's content by creating an artificial sense of urgency, insisting the offer was strictly time-limited and actively discouraging her from seeking independent legal advice from her lawyer nephew. Therefore, our analysis shows that all three core legal elements are highly compromised.
Next, legal principle. First, Contract Act 1950 at 136 Section 61, 16(2) and 63 provide that undue influence occurs when one party is in a position to dominate the will of another and uses that position to obtain an unfair advantage. In Dato Jaginder Singh and Vitara Rajaratnam 1983 2 MLJ 196 FC case, the Federal Court held that solicitor-client relationship created a presumption of undue influence. As the defendant failed to rebut this presumption, the transfer of land was set aside. Second, Contracts Act 1950 at 136, Section 18 defines misrepresentation as a false statement of fact that induces another party to enter into a contract. In Pitt v. Journey 1873 LR 6HL 377 case, the court held that the plaintiff could not claim the misrepresentation because he did not rely on the misleading prospectus when purchasing the shares. Therefore, the contract could not be rescinded.
The first legal principle is undue influence under Section 16 of the Contract Act 1915. A contract is voidable if there is a relationship of trust, one party dominates the other race and gains an unfair advantage. In this case, Daniel used money trust and lack of final knowledge to influence her decisions. The second principle is misrepresentations under Section 18A. Daniel falsely described the investment as low risk with guaranteed return which induced Mooney to sign the agreement. Therefore, under Section 19 of the Contract Act 1915, Mooney has the right to rescind or void the contract.
Next, the application to the fact. Firstly, under Section 16 of the Contract Act 1950, the issue of undue influence arises. In this case, Mooney, a retiree with no financial experience, placed full trust in Daniel, who was both her close friend and financial advisor. Daniel exploited this relationship by persuading her to accept the investment proposal. He further pressured her by emphasizing that the opportunity was time-limited and that she might miss out if she did not act quickly. As a result, Mooney agreed to the proposal without seeking independent advice or fully considering the terms. Secondly, under Section 18 of the Contract Act 1950, the issue of misrepresentation arises. Daniel had misled Mooney by assuring her that the investment was low risk, guaranteed high return, and suitable for her retirement needs. Relying on his position and advice as a financial advisor, Mooney accepted the proposal without fully understanding the actual risks involved. However, she later discovered that the investment was in fact risky and unsuitable, which ultimately caused her financial loss.
Now I will present the ethical reasoning. The main ethical question is whether Daniel, as a financial advisor, fulfilled his professional duty or misused his positions to exploit Mooney, a retirer, because he was also her family friend. Mooney trusts him blindly, but Daniel abused this trust and took advantage of her lack of financial knowledge. Mooney's interest was to have safe and secure investment for her retirement. Daniel's duty was to protect those interests. Instead, he pursued personal gain, gave misleading information about the risk, and pressured her into signing a complex proposal she did not fully understand. By doing so, he denied her the right to make an informed decision. These actions are clearly unethical. Mooney therefore has valid grounds to seek annulment of the agreement or compensation for her loss. To emphasize how serious such misconduct is, in March 2024, the Security Commission Malaysia revoked the license of financial advisor Lim Chi Kwang for fraudulent conduct, declaring him not fit and proper to carry out regulated business. This shows that regulators treat dishonesty as a grave ethical issue. Similarly, Daniel's behavior demonstrates a lack of honesty, integrity, and good faith. In conclusion, Daniel's conduct was ethically unacceptable and professionally indefensible.
From the perspective of moral reasoning and professional values, Daniel acted unethically by exploiting money trust, vulnerability, and lack of financial knowledge. As a financial advisor, he should have acted with honesty, good faith, accountability, and protected her best interests. Instead, he pressured money into signing a complex investment proposal that she did not fully understand. Daniel also misled Mooney by describing the investment as low risk with guaranteed returns without explaining the actual risk or whether it was suitable for her retirement needs. In addition, he encouraged her from seeking independent legal advice, showing lack of good faith. Since Mooney was an elderly retired who relied on Daniel's professional advice, Daniel had a fiduciary responsibility to act in her best interest. Therefore, Daniel failed to uphold important professional values, including honesty, accountability, fiduciary responsibility, and good faith. His conduct was both morally unacceptable and legally questionable.
To conclude, Group 7 finds that the contract is completely voidable under Sections 16 and 18 of the Contract Act 1950. Legally, Daniel's acts established clear grounds of undue influence and misrepresentations. Ethically, he violated his professional duty of care by exploiting a vulnerable retiree trust. Ultimately, his conduct was not just highly unethical, it was entirely illegal. Thank you.